I'm going to be talking about Aileen Wuornos. She killed 7 middle-aged white men. Their bodies were discovered from late 1989 to late 1990 in Central Florida, right where we live. Before killing her victims and stealing their car, she would rob them. She claimed that the first victim was an act of self-defense from sexual assault and tried to claim that for the rest of her victims, but she later took that back and stuck with only the one for being self-defense. The same man that had actually been arrested previously for sexual assault. Her lawyer had been attempting to convince the court that she was not sound in the head, which makes sense. When she was getting her lethal injection in 2002, her last words were, "I'd just like to say, I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back." So that obviously doesn't sound like something a sane person would say, to me at least. To be fair, if she didn't have the upbringing she did, maybe she wouldn't have turned out differently and not been a serial killer, maybe just been a normal person. She was failed since birth by her family and CPS so many times, she had become broken. She probably did get raped by her first victim, and something inside of her snapped, causing her to keep killing, and probably as a way of revenge from how she was treated as a kid and growing up. When she was found guilty by the jury, she yelled out, "I'm innocent. I was raped. I hope you get raped. Scumbags of America." She had an unhealthy living environment growing up. Her father killed himself in prison while serving time for child molestation. Her mother abandoned her and her brother. She then moved in with her alcoholic grandmother and abusive grandfather. She states that her grandfather sexually abused her and that she had sexual relations with her brother, so some pretty rough stuff growing up. At 14, she was raped by a family friend and got pregnant. She would later have to give her daughter up for adoption. And talking about her mental state and mental illness, many experts decided that her symptoms were in line with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, or BPD. They also mentioned BPD with paranormal features. BPD can be caused through early trauma and lack of nurturing, which is seen in this case. Her actions were very unstable, and she'd go through periods where her mental state is altered, which means she would go through manic episodes and delusions. Doctors also suggested that she was paranoid of getting raped again, since she was abused multiple times in her childhood and adult years, as we see with her grandfather in the first case. Due to her emerging trauma, her brain had become rewired to an anxious, unpredictable way of thinking, as a way to protect herself from the dangers in the world. As you see, Aileen was a pretty abnormal killer, I'd say, and abnormal in the fact that she was one of the first, or considered the first female serial killer. I think that was probably because of what happened in her childhood growing up, and I think that's one of the most interesting parts about this case.